Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, and it is Monday morning, which means it's time for the Monday Morning Meta Report. Now, if this video is coming out on time, patch rundown video just came out like less than 16 hours ago, so you know what we're doing about the patch and things like that. So hopefully, hopefully this is all talked about what the meta is right now. But yeah, still figured this is worth going into considering we had the B patch. Last week's Monday Morning Meta Report talked all about Aurelion Sol. This week we talk about different things. So as usual, these are all the disclaimers. It's based on experiences, internal data. Things can change, although patch notes are determined. So there you go. It doesn't mean we'll be acting on everything I talk about in here, and data only tells us what is, not what can be. Good stuff. Okay. So on the champs and trade side, I talked about this a little bit on Froden's stream, but it is a healthy competitive meta right now, which is good. There's no like S tier comp that's like dominating all competitive games. 4 costs are the main center point of comps, which is a pretty healthy meta. You know, you play early game, preserve health, reach level 8, play around a 4 cost carry, and there's a lot of 4 cost carry that are playable. There's the Yunara board, Kaisa, you can play Demacia, Seraphine Lys is doing well, Belveth, and there's more. There's actually more. So a lot of lines are very playable, which is cool. And even in the tournament, excuse me, even in the tournament, we saw some innovations, some people playing around things like Arcanist, some slight deviations that could make a really big difference on the fly. Overall, just a really, really healthy tournament meta, which was cool to see. But that being said, what I also said on Froden's stream was I wouldn't call it a fun meta. Right now, the gap between this sort of standard play and any other strategy is pretty wide. If you try to play something that's a little less normal, like say Aurelion Sol or T-Hex or 3-cost reroll or Noxus Vertical or even like Yasuo reroll, things like that, the gap is pretty wide. They're all much more difficult to play, and you have to have amazing spots for them. And even when you do, it's like, is it worth it? Not really. And I think that leads to a lot of people who try to play these really interesting lines just not really feeling like it's worth it, which can feel a lot less fun. If lines are going to be more narrow, right? Like Aurelion Sol's not that far off, but Aurelion Sol you can only play once in every once in a while games. And so when you finally get that really good Aurelion Sol game and you get him on 3-6 and he's not that great, that's pretty rough. Or you finally get an amazing Piltover start and you get the T-Hex and you hit T-Hex too and you just kind of get beat by a standard Yunara set board. Feels pretty bad. And so I think that's the big thing we're going to have to work on. And obviously you saw some of the patch rundown works on some of this. But that's definitely why I think you're seeing sort of this divide of some players calling this a really, really great meta because at a tournament level it is, and other players calling it not a great patch because there's not a lot of things you can play. Combine that with all the factors, with everyone feeling like they have to play 4-cost, this leads to an increase in 3-star 4-costs as well. Everyone pulling from the same bucket makes it pretty sweaty at the end. A lot of scouting, trying to stop that, especially in lower elos where the pressure is not as intense. That leads to a situation where everyone's just kind of chilling. No one's really contesting each other. And then all of a sudden, boop, there's a Garen 3. And you're like, okay, cool. So not speaking from experience or anything. But that's generally the kind of meta we're at right now. So again, pretty healthy for competitive. Still a lot of work to do to get more of the less A-tier lines to be playable. And like I said, I do, if you're going by a site like TFT Academy, I would actually say the gap between A and B tier is a little wider. Actually, not even a little. It's wider than we'd like. So generally with these meta reports, I always do like the champs and traits rundown and then one other interesting topic. The interesting topic I figured I would talk about today is what I'm going to call unintuitive power gaps. And it's basically that there are certain things in the game that you can do that really don't make a ton of sense to like a normal person until someone tells you about it. That's increasing the power of certain lines in a way that's making it really difficult to understand. A really good example of this is Yunara right now, whose spell has an AP scaler on the amount of attack speed you get. This is what's causing Titans to be one of her best in slot items, because when you get 50 AP and that 75% attack speed combined with Ginsu's now puts you at like 140, 150% attack speed, it's really, really good. Or if you've ever had to face a hold the line Yunara, where the front line is just giving that Yunara just a bunch more AP, and Yunara is getting like 200% attack speed, versus like a standard Yunara, which is like Ginsu's IE and Deathblade. And it's like that Yunara feels balanced to weak. And it's really unintuitive how that makes sense. And one of those things when I say it's unintuitive, it's like if you teach a player the fundamentals of TFT, telling them that, oh, secretly what you need is a bunch of AP on your auto attack AD user, that's really awkward. There's another example here, which I talked about in the patch rundown, which is the Freljord Disruptor bug. I think a lot of people were having mixed experiences with a champion like Lissandra. If you tried to play Lissandra by herself in like vertical Freljord or Invoker, you're like, this Lissandra's not doing that much. But you pair her next to a Seraphine who is a disruptor, and because of the bug, the Seraphine was doing way more damage. Or you try to play Piltover Seraphine, and you're like, why is my Seraphine doing half the damage that a Freljord Seraphine is doing? It's like, yeah, it turns out the bug is causing some really unintuitive interactions that make it really hard to learn TFT. And this kind of stuff can be really damaging. And it's not just like balance, but it's like perception of how things work that can be really rough. Another example I talk about in the rundown is how Aurelion Sol right now, you know, if you have an Aurelion Sol 1 and you're like, ooh, I really need to get stacks, intuitively you think I should play 6 Targon. But actually what you should be playing is the best frontline you can with some Arcanists to make your Aurelion Sol do as much damage as possible. And the difference between 3 Targon and 6 Targon isn't actually that wide. Again, pretty unintuitive. And so what I would say moving forward is a lot of these patches as we continue to evolve the set really need to clear up these unintuitive power gaps. Now, I want to be clear, this is fine, right? Some of you will call this like, well, isn't this like the skill of like learning where things are cool? And as long as it makes sense, that's great, right? So one example I'll use is Acceleration Gate being really, really good on Invokers. Because for those who don't know, Acceleration Gate gives you 40% of your mana back, but that is a mana gain. And so if you're playing Invokers, which say generate more mana, you get more. So Acceleration Gate Orianna is like really, really good. That makes sense. That's very intuitive. That's like, yep, the class that says I benefit from more mana gen likes mana gen. Great, right? We want to try to keep the game intuitive to that extent, right? Another example is Archangels and Sona healing, right? It's like, yeah, if you get your AP high enough, you heal a bunch. Makes sense. There's actually a really interesting example that's popped up pretty recently that you would call unintuitive, but also makes sense once you think about it, is like, hey, Mel does a mana drain, right? The longer her orbs are out, they drain mana. So if you have like an itemless Mel, well, those orbs stay out a long time because she takes forever to get to her main cast. And during that, she drains a lot of mana. So if you want to get your Mel to absorb radiant or make radiant items, having her not accelerate to the cast is actually a good thing, you know? And like that one's like borderline where it's like, wait, so I don't want my Mel to be casting? That's weird for sure. But it makes sense that if you leave it out there, she gains more mana, right? And so I think that's going to be the thing, is in the future, we have to figure out where that line is and how that works. But something I wanted to talk about is that if you see these sort of unintuitive power gaps, call them out, because TFT is a hard enough game to learn. It shouldn't be that unintuitive. All right, Portable Forge. There's been a shift here I want to call out here. Currently, Portable Forge is looking pretty solid at 2-1 like it has for a while. Now, we've been talking about how at 3-2 and 4-2 it's been a little weaker, but it's actually like quite a bit weaker now. We're talking like 4.6-ish, 4.6, you know. So that's not great. It's actually for the first time I've ever seen not the most picked augment in the stats. There's actually 2 augments that are being picked more right now. So that to me right now says actually artifacts have fallen out of favor. They're generally not very exciting. I think we still have a pretty good room to buff some more augments. Now, I know there's a couple in the patch rundown, but frankly, I don't think that's enough. I think we might have to buff them even more. The other artifact augments also aren't performing super well. So this is a sign that like we might need to go through and just do a nice pass on like augments. And again, I don't think we're like way off, because again, the 2-1 ones in particular sitting at like 4.48, which is like solid. The one augment artifact I'll call out that's still looking good is Sweet Treats. Even though this was mostly really good around Bilgewater and stuff like that, even in the data right now, it still looks pretty solid. So just want to be careful there. But overall, artifacts, you know, with our goal this set being that they weren't like incredibly meta warping, it's true, but we have shifted a little too far on the other side where they're just kind of meh. So All right, overperforming augments. Again, high elo, nothing too crazy here. The ones you'd expect. Golden Egg continues to be strong. Jarvan Shyvana continues to be strong. And again, Jarvan Shyvana being strong because if you're already playing Demacia and you pick it, turns out it's really good. I've talked about it before. Should we have shipped an augment that has this really narrow path? But it is what it is right now. The one that caught me off guard, I'll be honest here, was Hard Commit. Hard Commit, I actually can't explain this one. I'm going to have to look into it more. I'm just being honest with you. I found this Sunday at like noon. It's like 3 o'clock right now when I'm recording this. I need to actually figure out why Hard Commit looks really good in top 1%. Maybe there's something about it I don't personally understand. But that was an interesting one. Expected Unexpectedness makes sense. Solo leveling, people are finally learning how good this is. We didn't change it. We didn't buff it. Nothing around this got buffed. This is just players understanding when it's good. Flowing tiers was an interesting one. This is the silver one where you start with a tier. I think a lot of this is playing around things like the Seraphine Lysandra comp and their use of those tiers. Evolve and Overcome and Malicious Monetization both have been strong for a while. Those make sense. For our bottom 90% of players, again, Jarvan Shyvana, Silco's Revenge, Demacia Forever, Ruin King, all these verticals, even Darkwill's Invasion. It's not like Noxus is super good right now, but that's looking good. Expected Unexpectedness, Malicious Monetization, Early Learning, Sonar Reroll, and Low Elo. Awakened Soul, Golden Egg, Going Long, Greater Jeweled Lotus. Now, Greater Jeweled Lotus was right below the line in top 1%, so it is a very good augment overall. It's not just a low elo performer. And then the Zaheen augment also doing very well in low elo. So no big surprises here or anything like that. Obviously, the Aurelion Soul augment fell off, with Aurelion Soul nerfs. But overall, this looks pretty solid. On the flip side, it feels like we have it reversed, right? There were a lot of overperforming augments at low elo. There's a lot of underperforming augments at high elo. Wild Growth is still pretty bad. Treasure Hunt being this low is also a sign where I was talking about where the gap between forecast and anything reroll based, right? Like the fact that Treasure Hunt, if high elo can't play it right, that's a pretty bad sign that the augment's now just bad or the meta just does not support it. So anything reroll based right now just looking really weak. So to me, that's just not a great sign. Chaos Magic, as you saw in the patch rundown, we're disabling that. This one's nonsense. Rumble Hero Augment, Hefty Rolls, again, reroll just not doing well. I've seen players play Hefty Rolls and get it up to 1,000 HP, and it's still kind of bad. Ishtal Expeditionist, keep calling it out. We're never buffing this augment. It has like a 16% win rate despite its very low top 4 rate, which is what it's supposed to be. Dumbify, Trifecta, Efficient Shopper, Aura Farming. I'm really sad to see this. We gave this a full item and delayed it around. Seeing this still low makes me very sad. So hopefully we can get that fixed. Golemify, Ambessa, Kindred Duo, Secrets of the Sand, Cooking Pot. Pandora's Bench, I did want to call out this one as well. This is another one actually very much like Ishtal Expeditionist. It has a pretty solid win rate at like 14%, just a low top 4 rate. That is where an augment like this belongs, right? So Pandora's Bench, also not going to get any buffs anytime soon. And then Tactician's Kitchen. And the fact that emblems are now in a good spot means things like Tactician's Kitchen can get buffed up if it's, weak now. So, and then bottom 90% of players, nothing too crazy here that you wouldn't expect. Ishtal Expeditionist, Dumbify, Cooking Pot, Win Out. That one's probably the most surprising here, but especially with the level 8 nerf, that makes it even harder to play. Treasure Hunt, Trait Tree. This is another one that low elo struggles with. Flexible, Alawi Hero Augment, and Recombobulator. So these are kind of the ones underperforming at low elo. And then finally, known bugs. We haven't made much progress on the Yordle Shop UI, Void Gauntlet, Warpath on Ghosts, Ishtal Quest displaying the wrong number, and Luden's Tooltip. The 3 we did fix, and these are fixed in the bug report, but calling them out now. The Darius, we found a different bug that we're dealing with now. Jinx, we looked into this one, found out Jinx was doing less damage than intended. You saw that in the patch rundown. And then Disruptors, who are affected by Freljord, are doing more damage than intended. Again, that one's also fixed in the rundown. So there you go. And that is your Monday morning meta report. Patch comes out on Wednesday, and we'll keep shifting in this regard. But yeah, I think right now our goal is like things like the Yunara, Kaisa, Demacia is kind of the line. Let's get more things up to that line and keep opening up more champions. So cool. There you go. All right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.